Hi, I'm Nico, and I'm developing a 3D platformer where you play as a fish trying to escape a sushi restaurant. In this devlog, we are gonna see how some design decisions led me to scrap my original idea, but it turned out into something much better. So, I scrapped the sushi catapult, but what is a sushi catapult? It was my idea for a new game mechanic that allows you to reach really high places. I started by implementing some rigid bodies with movement and rotation constraints. Then I added code that would propel the player upwards if they were in the chopsticks when the sushi fell. And with that, I had a rough draft. In its most basic version, it seems to work pretty well. With this code, I could measure the distance the sushi traveled and based on that, assign a launch force to the player. But it's not enough for things to just work. When I add something to the game, I need to make sure I eliminate as many bugs as possible. And the first prototype has several. For example, sometimes the sushi will clip through the chopsticks and get stuck underneath, breaking the mechanism. Sometimes this happens with the player, which wasn't as bad, but it made the mechanic unreliable. It could even happen with the chopsticks, where they will go through the floor and flip upside down. I tried enabling continuous collision detection, which requires more processing but is supposed to be more precise and predict collision of fast-moving objects, but instead of fixing these errors, it seems to make them worse. I then tried restricting the movement of the pieces, resetting the rotation values to acceptable figures if they went out of range, and transporting the sushi if it fell too low. This slightly improved things, but I started doubting if it was the best approach. So I went for a solution that relied more on code and less on physics. It is often said that the handling of 3D physics isn't the best in this game engine. But after investing so much time into making this work, I hadn't stopped to consider whether what I was doing was as fun for the player as I had imagined. I think you can judge by yourself. The idea sounds much more fun than it looks. It is entertaining when it works, but the launch doesn't always happen. And this is because the player has to sync up with the sushi falling. The auto jump makes this task harder, and you only have the high jump and the air jump to help synchronize. This makes the mechanic easy to use, but difficult to fully master. It has a learning curve, which wouldn't bother me if the game had enough content to give players the time and opportunities to get familiar with, but the scope of my game is too small. It is meant for a short experience. After all, I'm making this as an excuse to learn about 3D modeling and game development. There was one more thing to try, measuring the player's timing and distance, and then controlling the sushi launch more precisely to make it easier to sync up. But it was at this point that I decided to change perspective entirely, and go for a more immediate approach, something that will launch you instantly. A shorter response time made for a smoother gameplay. So what could our character bounce off? It had to be something that you could find in a sushi restaurant. Mochi was the first thing that came to my mind. Mochi is a traditional sweet, very popular in Japan, made from glutinous rice that is pounded and kneaded until it has a soft and chewy consistency. In fact, it is very interesting and fun to watch how it is made. Usually, one person flips the dough, while another or several people hit it with mallets. I recommend that when you finish watching my video, you go and search a video about how mochi is made. And what better way to represent mochi than with a soft body, a deformable physics mesh used to create elastic or flexible objects. Okay, it's a bit, how can I say, pathetic. Supposedly, if it's a custom mesh, it won't look like a deflated Pac-Man, so let's try that. It's gonna be very easy to model. In Blender, I start with a cube, apply a subdivision surface modifier, add crease the bottom, and size them up. Then I apply the modifier and adjust some vertices with proportional editing. Done! Let's see. Okay, it's clipping through the floor. I guess increasing the simulation precision will fix that. Nope. Why don't things work the way I think they should? Now I have to do the hard work of fixing all the bottom vertices so they can't move. Do you remember the state machine I made 2 devlogs ago? And how it helped me slide when I implemented platforms in the last video? Well, now I can use it to add the bouncing state. God, this thing is so useful, I highly recommend it. Now the falling state registers the player's global height when they start falling, and the bounce state uses the value and subtracts the Mochi's position to calculate the distance fallen. Then it assigns a low, medium or high bounce height accordingly. After that, the bounce works similarly to the jump. It was that easy. This system, aside for having immediate interaction, it is more robust, with fewer bugs. Well, actually the soft body still glitches if I change the values, but in theory it works perfectly okay. And honestly, the effect of the Mochi squashing looks great. I would like it to be a bit more exaggerated, but I haven't found a way to do that yet. I've been tweaking all the values and this is the best I've got. It took a bit of trial and error to get it to hold its shape and not glitch out, but anyway. If you have any ideas on how to make it more exaggerated, let me know. Let's do a test. We are going to go through our obstacles, this time with the Mochi incorporated so you can see how it all looks. What do you think of the Mochi? Do you like it? Do you like the idea of the sushi catapult? I know I scrapped it, but it could always come back in the future. I can see it working like cannons in Spyro. You could use them to defeat enemies, interact with the world, or even unlock part of the level. I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I don't want you to get false expectations, since I want this to be a small game without too many things, but it's always fun to share ideas, so I'm open to hearing yours. Coming soon. Honestly, my project is pretty messy, so I will need to spend some time cleaning it up. It might not be the most exciting episode for those who are more into playing than developing, but if you're making a game or thinking of starting one, I think it will be really useful. I rushed at the starting of the project that I didn't stop to think about how to organize the folders or anything like that, but it's very important, and it's better to do it now than to keep putting it off. So I hope you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one, bye bye!